Welcome to Take Me With You, episode 19. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Cheryl. We are two well-traveled people who want to go everywhere.
But that's not going to happen. So instead, we'll travel vicariously by inviting a guest to share their unique travel stories with us.
Today, we are talking to Sara. Sara is a therapist in Seattle, and she not only has traveled some, she actually lived in another country for a year, too. So, I mean, I'm excited about that already. So, welcome, Sara.
Thank you.
Yay, welcome, Sara.
Oh,
Happy to be here.
Yay. I even see, is there a map on your wall behind you, or what is happening? You are a travel nut, aren't you?
Yes. If I had my way, I would take one big trip every single year.
Okay. Is that, so that's like the travel goal with you then, is like do one big one?
That's what I would love to have be my goal. Yes.
Okay. What's the reality right now?
Probably every couple of years I try to get away.
Yeah. Awesome. Very cool. Yeah. And then do you try to do like little trips at all in the meantime or things like that, or just kind of really save up for that big one, or how does that work out for you?
I usually have to get away during the year, just whether it's for a weekend or a week here and there. My sister and I traveled to San Antonio last year just to get away. So definitely try to take trips in between the big ones.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So would you define big one as going abroad, or would you define it by like length of time, or like what classifies as a big trip to you then?
Probably abroad, and probably somewhere that I've never been.
Okay.
So
do you prefer to not return to places that you've already been and go someplace new?
Do I prefer that? Yes. Does that always happen? No. Because I do fall in love with places. And, like Cheryl said, I lived overseas for a while. And so I always want to return there to Ireland where I live. So, I kind of get caught in between wanting to go back to those places, but also wanting to see new places.
Yeah. I feel like that is kind of the travel dilemma, is as you meet people and as you fall in love with places and you're like, oh, but like now I want to see it again or see the people again, or especially if that was home for you. Like, I haven't experienced that. So that's a big deal.
Yeah, it is. It's a good thing.
How long were you living in Ireland?
Lived there for 9 months.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
And were you in a big city, out in the country somewhere?
I was about half an hour to the east of Belfast in a relatively small town, but by their standards, it was still a decent sized town. Not a city, but there was like a little area, like a little downtown area that had a number of shops and that kind of thing. So it certainly wasn't way out in the country.
Oh, that's so cool. Wow.
It was awesome.
I'm a little jealous over here.
I would recommend it to anyone.
Ryan, can you do like a teach abroad program or like something like that?
Trust me, I've looked into that before. The challenge, there's several challenges. One of the challenges is the U.S. education system is so different from most of the other systems around the world. And so having experience in the U.S. system is not as desirable as in the UK system or the Australian system or other European systems, because we just do things. Surprise, surprise. We do things differently than everybody else.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Yeah. So, Sara, we have a few questions that we like to ask all our guests before we dive into your story. So, first one is, why do you travel?
I travel because I love getting to know other cultures and how other people live. I think it's just fascinating to see what daily life is for someone else in another part of the world. So I love kind of taking in the whole experience of food and music and art and everything that kind of makes that culture different than my day to day. And so I just love that part of travel, of being able to experience that and kind of get to know a place and what it's all about and what people value. That kind of thing is what I really love about traveling.
So how do you do that when you travel somewhere? Like what do you do? Because just seeing the sights doesn't necessarily give you all of those things that you listed, right? So what do you do so that you can have that experience when you travel?
I would say I try to get off the beaten path as much as possible. I'm not a big city traveler. I would much rather get, into a smaller community or, even the choices of where I would stay. I might rather do like an Airbnb or something like that where, it's not a hotel that's just kind of like every other hotel that you would see around the world. But I definitely like getting off the beaten path and, just maybe going into a pub that is just in that little town or, places where tourists wouldn't necessarily go, but, just kind of familiarizing myself with an area that just a lot of local people frequent, like maybe a market or, something like that.
Are you someone who's pretty outgoing when it comes to have you had some fun interactions with locals or things like that where you've kind of gotten to see the people more than just in passing, or is this more just you enjoy observing and watching others?
I would say probably more observing. I'm an introvert by nature. So I wouldn't say that I'm out engaging necessarily with people that I don't know, but again, though, if I have the opportunity to have a conversation with the person who owns the Airbnb or, something like that, then kind of getting to know their story a little bit can be fun.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So Sarah, how would you describe your travel style? What type of traveler would you say that you are?
I would say I'm not necessarily a good researcher prior to going.
Okay.
For instance, this trip that I'm going to talk about today, one of my really good friends pretty much planned the whole trip. And so I would say I'm a pretty go with the flow person. I don't have to have every day mapped out. I just kind of want to know, okay, where am I going to be for these few days, generally. And then, just kind of see what comes when I get there, see what I want to see and see what's around, that kind of thing. But I do I like it when somebody else researches it and just kind of figures out where the good places to stay are and that kind of thing. And I like traveling with people. So I would much rather travel with others than to be traveling on my own.
And have you had both experiences?
I've mostly traveled with other people, I would say. As much as I can recall, it's mostly with other people, unless it's somewhere just around here, where I live, just getting away for a weekend. I love doing that by myself. But anytime it's abroad, I like traveling with other people. And I like traveling with people that I know well enough that I know that we will travel together well.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were saying that you like when someone else researches and plans. Do you like it if then everything's planned out and they just tell you this is what we're doing today? Or once you're there, do you want to kind of make your own choices a little bit more as far as how you're spending your time?
I definitely want to make my own choices. So in general, the people that I've traveled with have a general idea of what's around. And then we all kind of decide what it is we want to do. And if there's more than one person that wants to do whatever it is, then we kind of journey off into doing that. So it's not necessarily that the whole group has to stay together, but just that we have a general idea of what is there to see around this place and and then kind of figure it out as we go.
Cool. That sounds fun.
Yeah.
Do you generally travel with the same group or some version of the same group of people, or are those big trips you talked about, are they with different groups of people every time?
They are different, I would say. There's one, so when I lived in Ireland, I had a really good friend that also lived in Ireland at the same time, who was from Washington State. And so anytime I get the opportunity to travel with her, I know that we will travel together really well.
Tried and true, yeah.
Yes. But I've traveled with others. I've traveled with my sister and other friends. But I would say for some of these bigger trips that I would want to travel with somebody that I had traveled with before. So this trip to Chile was the biggest group that I had traveled with. There were 5 of us. So usually it's just 1 or 2 other people.
Okay. So what is your number 1 travel tip?
My number 1 travel tip is to not jump from place to place quickly, but instead to pick a few places, and they can be spread out from one another, but I would say staying in the same place for 2, 3, 4 days at a time, because then I think you really kind of start to get the feel of the place. I've done the traveling around Europe and stay 2 days in Italy and 2 days in France and 2 days in wherever, and it's just too fast for me. I would rather feel settled, kind of move myself into where I'm staying for a few days, and then have kind of a home base for several days in one place. So that's the way I like to travel, and I would recommend it, just because I think you really get to know a place that way.
That's such good advice. I fall into that trap so many times where I'm like, oh my gosh, but it's right there. It's only a 4-hour train ride away. Like I could hit another country, or I could go to all these cities because there's, and then it just becomes like, yeah, but am I going to enjoy it if I do it that way? So that's such good advice. Yeah.
Well, so an example of that is just this last trip when we were planning on going to Chile. We were also planning on going to Argentina. And we had this whole plan of renting a car and taking it over the mountains and going into Argentina. And it wasn't working out because the rental car situation is really hard, I guess, to take a car across that border.
Oh, interesting.
Which is unique. I mean, I hadn't run into that before, but we were, the whole group was kind of bummed that we weren't going to be able to see another country and kind of check off Argentina and Chile. But instead it turned out really, really good. And we were really glad that we actually didn't try to also see Argentina.
Oh, cool.
We just had that much more time in Chile to actually feel like we had seen it. So
that's so cool.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it too, that there are too many times, and I think it's easy to see travel as a checklist, and it'd be like, well, how many countries have you been to, or things like that, and that's not really the purpose of it. And so that's a good reminder of that. Yeah.
Great tip. So, and you kind of already hinted at it. So let's go ahead, and why don't you tell us about your trip? When did you go? Where all exactly did you go? And what was it like?
Sure. Well, I was invited to go to Chile with 4 other people. As I said before, my one friend that I had lived in Ireland with. So I went with that friend and her husband and her brother and her sister-in-law. So I was the only non-family member, which at first I was like, how is this going to work? But I trusted my friend that I had gone to Ireland with, that if she can travel with these people, then I for sure can travel with these people. So
it was 2 couples and then you
as
well? All right. So that's kind of another odd man out of the situation.
Yeah. It was, but they were just so easy to travel with, and I would totally do it again with that group of people. So they made it really fun. So we went for 2 weeks. down to Chile, and we landed in Santiago, but we didn't stay in Santiago right then. We went straight out to the coast to Valparaiso. And Valparaiso reminds me actually a lot of Seattle in that it has a lot of container shipping. And it used to be, I believe I heard this, that it used to be the biggest port city until the Panama Canal was built. And so,
wow.
Yeah. So for all of South America, I think, until the Panama Canal was built. So, so it used to be really active and, busy, bustling place, but you kind of see that when you come into town, but it also hasn't been that way for several years. So it's kind of like the city that you go to that used to be really pretty and thriving, and now it's just kind of, I don't know if I would say run down, but it certainly isn't, its glory days that it was in the past. So
not like ghost town level.
No.
But like, yeah.
No, like it's busy, but
interesting.
But it's kind of that like a little bit of like that old world charm where that it used to be this really cool place. But we traveled there by an Uber, and we had this address that we were going to for our Airbnb, and our driver drops us off in this, I don't even think it was really a driveway, and he just says, "Here you go." And we're like looking around, and we have no idea where our place is. So what we kind of knew but didn't really understand until we got there was that Valparaiso is all hills. There are hills and there are stairways everywhere throughout the city. And so we were like, well, there's this stairwell right here. We don't know where it leads, but maybe we go up the stairwell, we find out where we're staying.
Oh, geez.
And so we all put on our backpacks and get out of the car, and we're just kind of wandering through the streets, and we're trying to kind of ask people along the way where this address is. And they would just kind of point off in some direction. So we would just follow. Again, we're just kind of wandering. So it turns out that that we had actually walked above where we were staying, and we had to kind of turn around and walk down this really steep set of stairs. And our little Airbnb was about halfway down that stairwell. So if you can imagine, there's all these places that are almost kind of like stacked on top of each other, and you can only access them by this stairwell. So there's no way to like pull into a driveway, or, if you were carrying groceries, you're like carrying them up and down the stairs to get to your front door.
I'm just trying to picture like moving furniture in those places
too. Yeah, I can't imagine that. So we stayed in this absolutely amazing place. And basically everywhere in that city, anywhere you stay or anywhere you eat or anything has a view, because it's all built on hills. So we had this really big balcony that we could go out on and just have the view of the water and the whole city. It was just amazing. So and that's one of the places where we actually kind of got to know our Airbnb host, like I was talking about before. So that was just kind of fun to find out more about him. And I can't remember where he was from, but he was not from Chile. I want to say he was from New Zealand or something, but he had moved there and was living there. So, yeah. So
did he stay there, and then he was like renting out some of his space to you guys then?
Okay, yeah. So, he had a place that we could kind of see from our balcony, and then he had this separate Airbnb. So he owned a few places around the city. Yeah.
Very cool.
It was really cool. Yeah.
So what did you enjoy doing in that city?
So I have never really traveled like this, like we did in this city. But we kind of figured out that it was it wasn't really a small town, come to find out, but we thought it was. And so we just decided to walk. We didn't have a rental car. So we just decided that each day we were there, I think we were there for like 4 days, we were just going to walk and just get lost and see where we ended up, which was amazing.
Really?
It was so cool. So if you can imagine, again, this city that is built on the hillside, there are stairwells everywhere. There are cobblestone streets that you kind of end up on that are windy, up and down hills. And there are murals everywhere, all over the walls in this city. But they're like really nice murals, like really artistic, cool murals. And so it's this very artsy city. I think it was probably one of my favorite places I've ever traveled, just because
really
everywhere you went, you would just find these little hole-in-the-wall places. The restaurants were like that. You would just kind of stumble upon a stairwell and you would just take it and see where it ended up and come to find out here's a restaurant overlooking the city.
Cool.
Yeah. So we wandered every day for like 4 days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And they have these old, I don't know if you've ever heard of a vernacular before, but it's...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So in a few places throughout the city, there are these little tracks where you can get in this little car and it'll take you up the hillside so you don't have to walk up it.
Are those like the windy ones?
No, they're just straight up.
Okay.
They're usually straight, yeah.
Okay, it's like a chairlift, but on the ground or something like that.
Well, I think the ones I've seen before are actually like enclosed car. Think of like a gondola, but that isn't suspended.
Right.
It's on tracks. Is that the same thing it was in Chile?
Yes.
What?
Yeah.
That is so cool.
And they are in this town, they are very rickety.
Oh, boy.
Oh. Okay.
Good thing it wasn't in the air then. Oh, my goodness.
I don't know which one would have been better, in the air or the way that we did it, but yeah. So again, like these vernaculars were kind of throughout the city in random places, and you would just kind of take the vernacular up and see what was up there in that area as well. So, and actually at the top of one of those vernaculars was my favorite restaurant of the whole trip. And Cheryl, I know you're a foodie.
Yep. Let's hear all about it.
I'll just sit back
Ryan,
and
let
you guys talk.
Cheryl, I don't know if you've ever had empanadas.
Yes.
Like
Ooh.
real empanadas.
I don't know how like legit of those I've had, but I do like even the ones I've had. So let's hear about your empanadas then.
Oh my gosh. So we stumbled upon this really tiny little empanada shop, and we went in and there was a woman and what appeared to be her elderly mother that were just cooking empanadas. And there were probably
good start.
there were probably 3 tables in the whole place.
Oh my goodness.
And so it was just this little local family run business, but holy cow, their empanadas were fabulous. So we just sat in this little tiny place. Have we convinced you, Ryan, you want to go there?
Well, I may have been looking at pictures of the place while you're talking, so it looks gorgeous. But for those of us, me, who are not foodies and have heard of the word empanada but don't actually know what that food is, could you describe that a little bit?
I want you to guess first.
Well, it sounds like, well, in my head, anything like that looks like a burrito. So I feel like it's some sort of tortilla, something that's rolled, and there's probably some sort of meat and rice thing inside. That's all I know. And
Decent.
It's probably wrong.
Kind of.
So what is it actually?
It is usually kind of in the shape of a half moon. And it's a
think of a
pastry.
calzone.
Yes, it looks like a calzone.
Mm-hmm.
With like the little edges, that are kind of pinched down with a fork, right? But they're filled with cheese, meat. I had one that had corn inside.
Ooh.
Yeah, so you can kind of order all different kinds, pork and chicken and cheese and oh my gosh, but they're so good. They're just like this flaky pastry. So
I just had dinner and I'm so hungry now.
I actually made them once I got home because I was like, I gotta try and make those.
Oh, that's so fun.
They weren't half as good. Yeah. So Valparaiso was just amazing. There was one night where we kind of stumbled upon this restaurant. We just followed this set of stairs down and we found out that there was this restaurant down there that opened up to this amazing outdoor seating overlooking the city. And mind you, this is probably at 8:00 at night. So the city is dark and we're looking out over all the lights. And we were the only ones in the whole restaurant. And come to find out, when we arrived, there were some people leaving that we later found out were the cooks. So our dinner took approximately 3 hours for the one man who was running the restaurant to make.
Oh my gosh.
We're talking like making things like pasta, like from scratch.
Oh my
by
gosh.
hand. But we had no idea when we ordered that he was the only one that was left in the whole restaurant to make all this stuff. So he just kept bringing us wine and then disappearing for like ever.
You're like, well, I guess we have wine. So like, okay.
It worked. I mean,
how did you find out that it was the cooks that left earlier? How did you ever figure that out?
Because I think my friend actually said, oh yeah, I thought that was kind of weird. I saw a guy with like a chef's apron leaving. and I think maybe the man who was there that was left said something about being on his own that night or something. I don't remember how it was. But it was just him. It was just him. But we sat there for 3 hours waiting for our meal and just drinking wine and looking at the city. It was just one of those things that's a memory, like how long do we sit here?
Yeah.
But it worked out.
And food did eventually come.
Food did eventually come.
And it was good?
It wasn't that...
It was okay?
It was okay. The cooks maybe
and
were
was it
better.
3 hours wait good?
Then like, how good is it going to be?
I know. We were hoping, right? After waiting for 3 hours. So, but just good memories all around with Valparaiso.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
So what other places did you go to in Chile then?
So then we had an adventure of renting a car.
Oh, all right.
With all 5 of us in this car. And this was the part of the trip where it was kind of a last minute change because we were planning on going to Argentina. And so instead, my friend found this place called Pisco El Key. And it's a valley. And it was probably about a 6-hour drive, I want to say, north. And so we were basically in the foothills of the Andes Mountains, which was, again, amazing. And actually, once we heard about Pisco El Key, we were no longer upset that we were not going to be able to go to Argentina because it just sounded amazing. And so we arrived in this, now this was a little teeny town, but we arrived in this little teeny town late at night, probably like I guess it wasn't that late, maybe like 10 o'clock at night. But as we're driving there and we're getting closer and closer, all you see, it's just pitch dark, but you can see the outline of the mountains as you're driving. And you just think, oh my gosh, when we wake up in the morning, this is going to be fabulous.
Oh, cool.
And the other thing that you could see were hundreds of stars. So we're just...
now I want to be there.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So we get there and we stayed in this little hotel type place. If anyone wants to go, it's called El Tesoro del Elqui. It was kind of like a bed and breakfast. So they served you your breakfast in this one room every morning. And it was actually a really good breakfast. And then they had kind of these separate, they were kind of like cabins that each person got their own cabin. And so...
What?
Yeah. So each couple had their own cabin, and then I had my own private cabin.
Cool.
And then they had these detached bathrooms, which was kind of weird. So you had to like walk outside to go to your assigned bathroom.
Your own bathroom, though? Oh, that's funny.
But the cool thing about it is that the bathrooms, only you had the key to it. And so you could essentially move all your stuff into the bathroom and nobody else was going to be using that space.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh.
Yeah.
Then it's just funny that the bathroom wasn't in the cabin, but you know.
I know, right? But it kind of added to the, it added to the whole experience just because that's not something that you would normally have happen. So I stayed in this little cabin called Violetta. And
they have names.
They do have names. And so
that's cute.
My friends would come outside the door in the morning when they were headed to breakfast, and they would sing to me, Violetta, Violetta, to make sure that I was awake and to come and get me for breakfast. It was very cute.
That's so cute.
It was very cute. But the setting of this place was, several of these little cabins and then kind of winding paths through them. And then down at the very end of their property was actually a pool. And they had hammocks and they had like a little pool house. And they had a place where you could get massages, which we all did.
Yeah.
I know. So it was just this really cool kind of hotel, different kind of place where you can stay. But I would definitely recommend it to anybody who's ever going to travel to Chile. It was amazing. So in this little town, there wasn't a whole lot to see, but there was like a little market, some really great jewelry makers there in this little village. So if you were into that, that was cool. I don't know if you've heard of pisco sours.
No.
Okay.
I mean, I've heard of a sour, but I don't think I've heard of a pisco sour before.
Okay. So
what's in it?
A pisco sour there's a distillery there in town that makes pisco. And it's I don't know what you would call it. It's the liquor that goes into a pisco sour.
Okay.
And so we went to the distillery and we tasted these different piscos. I don't know what else to call them. They were way too strong for me, but it's kind of a cool thing because if you ever order a pisco sour, this is like the originating place. Was there in the Pisco Elqui Valley. So that was fun.
That's so fun.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah.
I'm looking up what pisco is now.
Yeah, see, you can give us the definition.
Is it similar to like a tequila or a vodka or like...
Yes.
Oh, it says it's technically unaged brandy. Oh. Interesting.
I did not know that.
Oh, it's from grapes, though. Interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
Cool. This is true.
Oh, that's
I remember
so cool.
hearing that. Yeah.
All right, you heard about some grapes?
So all
Some
around
grape top
town,
going
this is the place where you order pisco sours for sure, right? Because this is where they're made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that was amazing. Really cool restaurants. There was one restaurant where we ate, where we essentially sat outside, and there was like the whole restaurant had a gravel floor, which you don't see very often, but it had this gravel floor, and then out behind it was this huge fire pit. And what we found out in Chile is the restaurants will have a musician come in, but they will only play like 2 or 3 or 4 songs, and then they'll move on to the next restaurant.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So it's kind of like you have this live music experience, but for like 15 minutes, and then they're gone. So here we are sitting around this fire pit, listening to this Spanish singer-songwriter guy playing his guitar and having our dinner, and it was beautiful.
And then he's like, okay, bye.
Yep. So he'd go around and he'd gather his tips from all the tables, and then he would be gone.
And then would somebody else come in then? A different musician, or was that just it?
Nope, that was it.
Okay.
That was it. And in this
funny.
small town, something that was really interesting, we were really disappointed because when we first came into town that first night, we saw this really cool restaurant on this one street corner where like there was no glass in any windows. It was just open air. And so we were like, oh, we want to go back there. We want to go sit in this kind of open air restaurant. So we went to go the next night, and it's closed. And we were like, that's weird. Like, why would it be closed tonight? Well, come to find out, it's such a small town that only certain restaurants, like they have this agreement among themselves that only certain restaurants are open on certain nights. So that they don't compete with each other.
Interesting.
Yeah. So if you missed the night that restaurant was open, it wasn't going to be open for another several days. So, yeah.
That's really interesting.
It was great.
I wonder if they share some of the people that work for them or something like that then.
Oh, maybe.
Like, I wonder if that helps employment in the town or two. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's really interesting.
So, Sarah.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but in Chile they speak Spanish. I think that's correct. Do you and or any of your other traveling companions speak Spanish?
The simple answer to that is no.
Okay.
Which is also Spanish for no, so we don't know yet.
There was one person in our group that basically sustained the rest of us during the entire trip. So the poor guy was trying to translate everything.
Oh, wow.
I remembered my high school Spanish, which was not helpful because I would get so excited to ask a question, but then I would have no idea what their answer was. So I was no further along in finding out what I needed to know.
Yeah.
So we just kind of stumbled through.
And I'm curious because it sounds like you were more, like you described earlier, more off the beaten path in smaller towns. So how much English was there?
None.
So you really did get to experience the culture as it truly is.
Yes.
And so they didn't. I think that's cool because so often, because English is widely spoken across the world, not that everyone speaks it, obviously, but it is one of the more common languages that you tend to run into. And so we don't always have to go through those experiences, but I think that can be really valuable, if not challenging.
Exactly. I mean, it gave you a real appreciation for, again, this is my kind of travel of like actually being out and seeing something that is not something that you would see every day. And it's not even necessarily touristy because it's so out there. So
interesting.
I just love that.
Wow.
So if there are people listening who are, let's say, intimidated by that, going to a country or going to a part of a country even where English is not something that's widely spoken, how would you encourage them to go ahead and do it anyway? I'm assuming you would, because you enjoy that type of travel. So like, how would you coach them through going somewhere where English it's not written, it's not spoken, and you don't speak the language?
Well, I myself haven't had that experience really, other than in Chile. So what I would say about my experience in Chile is that they are so incredibly friendly and warm and welcoming that I would not worry about that at all to travel there again. Even by myself, I think I actually would maybe travel there by myself. I mean, I always think it's more fun to travel with people, but
Sure.
But I found the people so warm that they really wanted to help you. And so it was almost like we were stumbling through and they were also stumbling through, because they're trying to help us and they're trying to use hand signals or whatever they could to try to help us to understand.
Wow.
So I guess I don't, that's just one place where I guess I just really wouldn't worry about it a whole lot.
That's so cool.
I don't think it's like
a very
that everywhere.
Shared human experience then. That's really neat.
It was amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Were those all the locations or did we miss one?
Well, we went to Santiago.
Yeah, because that's where you flew in and out of. Is that right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
So after we went to Pisco El Key, we drove back to Santiago, and we stayed in the city there for our last few days. I think we were there for 3 days, maybe 4 days. And that was a completely different experience because now you're in a massive city. We stayed on the 22nd floor of an apartment building in an Airbnb.
Oh.
And so we had a view of all of the mountains. We had this amazing deck that basically surrounded the whole apartment. And that place was really cool. We had a little mishap in that apartment.
Oh boy.
Well, we tried to do laundry, and because we're nearing the end of our trip, and so we're all kind of in need of some clean clothes. And so we washed our clothes, but then we noticed that there was a dryer, what we thought was a dryer, which I think was the same machine as the washing machine. So we were like, this looks like it both washes and dries. Never seen anything like that before.
Okay.
So one of the guys that was on our trip, he sees that there's a water shutoff valve. So he thinks, I'm going to turn off the water valve just in case, right? So if we put our clothes in here and we turn on what we think is the dryer, that no water is going to come in and get our clothes wet all over again.
Okay.
Which, in theory, should have worked.
I'm nervous about this.
So it should have worked, only the water shutoff valve was really close to being broken when he turned it.
Oh, no.
So when he turned it, water started spraying everywhere.
Oh, no.
Everywhere. Right? So we're staying in this Airbnb. Water is spraying everywhere. We're trying to seal the water valve back down, but the handle on it is broken, so it will not seal. It will not close.
No.
So as long as it's not closing, water is going to keep coming out. So
yep, that makes sense.
So we had buckets and rags and all this stuff.
No.
But essentially, one person had to stand there and try to hold a rag over the top of the pipe.
Oh, no.
But still, water's going out.
But that doesn't solve the problem.
No.
The water's just going to keep going.
Uh-huh. And this is
Oh, gosh.
like 10 o'clock at night. Probably.
Of course it is.
No.
So we get in touch with the Airbnb owner, who I think was out of town at the time.
Sure.
Of course.
Yeah.
And at first
Makes
she's
sense.
like a little bit mad at us because she thinks that we broke this thing. And we're like,
Sure.
no, like we didn't break it. Like we promised we didn't break it. And so I'm trying to think. Of course we couldn't call a plumber because it's late at night. So we ended up having to call the building maintenance guy, I think. But then we were afraid that we were going to shut off the water to the whole building, right?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
But we're on the 22nd floor, so there's clearly a lot of places in here. So this guy comes and he finds out how to turn off the water. So we get the water turned off, and then we're trying to clean everything up. But then we're like, well, when is our water going to get turned back on? We're only here for a few days. Like,
You're like, we kind of want to shower.
we
at
can't
some
shower.
point. Yeah.
And it's really hot and it's really humid.
Oh,
So,
boy.
yeah.
So you need a shower.
Yeah. So, yeah. So we did not get the water turned back on for, I think, 24 hours later or something like that. So we were out of water like the whole next day. But
Okay, so
yeah.
I'm afraid to ask this question,
Uh-oh.
but so no water for over 24 hours. I understand the whole showering thing, and I can understand water in a sink.
I know where you're going.
What about toilets?
Oh, yep.
Yeah.
There it is.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I'm
We kind
concerned
of-
about how much you're pausing right now.
we had to take, what did we do?
It was so bad you blocked it
I
out.
feel like maybe there was, for some reason, one sink that worked, which I still don't know why. And so I think we filled buckets and just had to, throw it forcefully
Wash
down the
them out
toilet.
down the sink. Oh,
Okay.
Uh-huh.
All right.
Now, mind you, during this time, I got really, really sick.
Oh, no.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. And sick. Yeah, I got really, really sick. So I basically saw none of Santiago. Really. Yeah. I was kind of in the apartment the whole time, which was not fun without working toilets. So yeah, it was a little touch and go there for a little while. But so I really can't tell you a whole lot about Santiago.
Oh, goodness.
What I saw of it was cool, but I was actually very, very grateful that was where I got sick because, again, I'm not a big city person.
Sure.
So if it were me, I'm not sure that I would go back and spend time in Santiago.
Okay.
But that might just be because I didn't
Sure.
really get to see it either.
And you were sick.
Because I was sick.
Did your friends
water
get
went
to go?
everywhere.
Did your friends get to go in the city then?
Oh, yeah. Yep. So they were.
So what did they have
out
to
and
say
about.
about it then?
They really liked it. There's a few really cool lookout places. There was one in particular, and I don't know what it was called, but it was this park that was on the top of a hill, and you could overlook the whole city. They had
cool.
good things to say about the food, which I did experience a little bit just before we left. But in my opinion, it wasn't half as cool as the small places that we had been. And the food, to me, was better in these small places where we went as well. So,
Gotcha.
So I mean, and you do not have to go into any detail, but when you say that you were sick, one thing that definitely I think is something that comes to people's minds when traveling to at least what I think a lot of people have the image of what Chile would be like. And I've never been there, so I don't know what Chile is actually like. But like possibly like the water, if the water was, clean enough or whatever, was it that kind of sick? Like, do you think Chile got you sick?
Or like a food poisoning situation?
Yeah, or like food poisoning, or was it just,
more like
you just
you're
got
traveling?
sick?
I actually think that it was the heat that got me.
Oh.
Interesting. So
You know
it was
what?
that hot?
That happened to me when I was in Australia, actually.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So I understand.
Yeah.
That's miserable. Oh my gosh.
It is. It was very hot and humid, and we were walking everywhere. And I think just after that many days of I have no idea how many steps we did a day, but it was a lot. It was a lot.
If you were doing stairs for 4 days too,
Sure.
I mean, like,
Yes. Yeah. So I don't think that it was anything I ate, because I essentially ate the same thing as everybody else.
yeah, you just got overheated and worn out. Then.
Yep. I just don't think I could tolerate that heat. So that's one thing to know when you travel there. And we went in, when did we go? We went in April, beginning of April.
Okay.
And it was already
they're
really
on
hot.
reverse seasons, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, because they're in the southern hemisphere.
So it would be the fall. Their
Yes. Yep.
fall. Okay.
But relatively early in their fall.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, about halfway through their fall, I guess.
Well,
Depending on when in April you went.
yeah, we were in the end of March, beginning of
Okay.
April.
Okay, then
Okay.
that's just the very, very beginning of their fall.
Yep.
So that would be like, for us here, like September,
Right.
Okay.
which we can still have decently warm weather in
Sure.
September here.
Yeah.
So
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, Sarah, we have a question to ask you based on the title of our show. If you could take us with you to just one thing on this whole trip, what would it be and why?
I would say I would take anybody to one of the observatories out in the Pisco El Key Valley to look at the stars.
Whoa. You did not tell us about an observatory.
I was waiting for it. Jeez.
Wow.
I knew you were going to ask me, so I had to keep it until the end.
Okay,
That was a
okay,
good
all right. Well, now
surprise
you need to tell me
there.
about this observatory.
Oh my goodness. So there's a little town called Vicuña in Chile, and it was probably
Okay.
about half an hour outside of Pisco El Key where we were staying. And they have these vans that take you, there's these companies that take you up to their observatories on the top of these really large foothills of the Andes, basically. And up there, they've got these telescopes that are fascinating. So you take a small group of people up there. There were probably 12 of us maybe up there. And what I never knew, right, because we're in the northern hemisphere, if you were at the top, if you were up at this observatory and you looked to the north, there were stars. I mean, there were several stars, right, that you could see. But if you turned around and looked to the south, it was, oh my gosh, like millions of stars.
You saw the
Millions.
Milky Way.
Cool.
Yes, but what was
You just
weird,
melted Ryan's heart.
I know, he's so excited.
And you saw it in the southern hemisphere, which is the better place to see it.
I come to find
You were
out.
looking at the center of the galaxy where the supermassive black hole is. Oh my gosh. Oh, I'm so jealous right now.
Ryan, you're going to be really jealous because Chile and a place in Hawaii are the top two places to observe the stars in the whole world.
Wow.
So
I
that's
guess Ryan's
Two places
going
I have
to
not
Chile.
Oh my gosh. Okay, no, I have to ask. So, what did you say the name of this observatory was?
Oh, it's in the town of Vicuña, And I don't know what company we went with, but there's a lot of different.
So did they provide like transportation and like the whole experience? Like you
Yes.
just like, okay, that's cool.
Yep.
That's awesome.
And you're up there, obviously, like late, really late.
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
probably up there. I want to say we were up there for like 3 hours, maybe.
Cool.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So they show you all this cool stuff in the telescope, and you can see like stars being created, like born, and all this stuff through the telescope. Yeah.
Okay, so this is you were.
He went from happy to angry. We turned a corner.
Uh-oh.
I'm just angry that I wasn't there.
Well, you asked
Take me with
where I
you. Oh my gosh.
take somebody,
Yep.
and that's where.
Ryan, she offered to take us.
That's true. You said this would be where you would take us. So that is the right answer.
Yeah.
I'm doing some Googling here. Mamayuca Observatory?
Maybe?
Or Observatorio del Pangue?
Yes. That's it, I think.
That one?
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
There you go.
Cool. Oh, man. I would like to take some empanadas to go on this observatory trip, though. So,
you know what?
We could arrange
Cheryl,
that.
if we get to go, you can take whatever food you want.
All right. Okay. Let's go.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh. It was
That's so cool.
that was a memory of a lifetime.
I mean, what a reason
Yes.
to get out of the city, too, is to see
Yes.
good stars. That's awesome.
Well,
Wow. How
and
fun.
when all you're ever used to is seeing the, the northern hemisphere, you're looking at a completely different sky, and so you're not you're not recognizing necessarily what you're seeing, but just things
so
that you've
cool.
heard about. So it was.
Did you see the Southern Cross?
Yes. I see that. I can hear you. You're very upset.
I know.
I'm not upset.
I know.
I'm just jealous.
He's not angry. He's just disappointed. So.
Right. Well, Ryan, I think you need to go there.
Okay.
Ryan, you went to Australia.
I know, and it was cloudy most of the time.
Oh, okay. Got it. How about during the eclipse? Weren't you there for an eclipse?
Yeah, it was cloudy during the eclipse.
Oh.
I would love to tell that story at some point.
Oh,
But
boy. Yeah. Wow.
yeah, I mean, it wasn't totally cloudy for the entire eclipse, but it was definitely cloudy for part of the eclipse.
Oh,
So,
man.
yeah,
That is
and then when
sad.
we went to Sydney, we went to the observatory in Sydney, and it was raining that night.
Oh.
When we went, so
Man.
Oh,
Well, should have gone with Sarah to Chile.
yep.
apparently, I wasn't invited at the time, though.
Oh. Well, now you are.
This is a podcast
Thank
where we
you.
just get angry at all of our guests for not actually taking us with them.
Oh.
That is
my
a very
goodness.
good take me with you.
It is. It's really good. Yeah. So, Sarah, what's your next trip?
I don't know. I don't have one planned right now.
But oh my goodness.
I really, really want to go back to South America.
Really?
Really.
Where would you go this time?
I would love to go to Patagonia.
Okay.
Now, Patagonia is not its own country; it's a region. Is that correct?
Yes, it's in southern Chile, which we didn't
Okay.
even get to because Chile is so big.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
would say that, or I would love to go to Peru.
Cool.
Like go see Machu Picchu or something.
Yeah. So I
Cool.
just,
Yeah.
I love the Spanish language. I love the culture. And so I would probably say somewhere again in South America.
Cool. That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, one thing I did think of though is so I'm a big public transportation fan when possible when I'm traveling.
Uh-huh.
So like you guys rented a car, but like if you had wanted to, could you have done like a train or a bus, or was it like no, really, like a car's going to be the best way to go?
To get to the valley, the Pisco El Key Valley, I know that you could have taken a bus. I have no idea if you could have taken a bus all the way from Valparaiso to there. I'm guessing you probably could have.
Okay.
And then obviously in Santiago, you could take public transportation and
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Sweet. Well, do you have any travel questions for us?
Where are your next trips?
Oh, Ryan has a good answer.
My next trip is to the Galapagos Islands. So we'll spend a little bit of time in Ecuador. So I'm going to South America. And then we'll be out we're doing a cruise through a few of the islands.
Oh my God.
I am hopeful that since we'll be out in the middle of the ocean, I will be able to see some of those Southern Hemisphere constellations out on the ship.
Oh my gosh. That sounds great.
Stay tuned for that episode at the end of April, and we will share about that.
Yes, I am taking students with me. So
are you?
Yes.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's the only way I can afford to go.
Getting someone else to pay for it is always good.
You know?
Fair.
Yep.
Yeah.
How about you, Cheryl? What's your next trip?
I think I don't have it booked yet. I think my next trip is going to be to Nevada to visit my grandparents. So that'll just probably be, I mean, they live kind of near Reno. So, like, it'll mainly just be, like, hanging out with them. That's the purpose of it, you know, and everything. But I am considering, like, should I look up, like, one fun thing to do in Reno? Or I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I haven't really spent much time there other than visiting them. But, yeah, so that will be a very, like, family hangout type of trip. So, yeah.
Nice.
Yep. Cool.
Well, thank you for sharing about your trip. And, of course, now I want to go to Chile.
I know, right?
And you should.
This was the worst idea we've ever had to start this podcast, because now I'm just sad about all the places I haven't gone to.
We just need everybody to like and subscribe and give us all these really good reviews so that other people hear it and so that people start paying us to go travel to other places.
Listeners.
That's what we really need. Oh,
okay. So,
yeah, it works for me. So now it's time for the last segment of our podcast today, called Wish You Were Here. So each of the three of us is going to highlight a travel attraction from one of the places that we've been in our travels, kind of like the little, Wish You Were Here postcard, and it would send you a picture. This is this cool place. Wish you were here. So Cheryl, why don't you get us started?
Okay, so this one is, I'm going to share about a specific location, but also it's just maybe kind of a version of a travel tip as well. So we're kind of doubling up here. So the specific place is called the Aqua Bliss Fish Spa in Barcelona. Ryan, you would hate it. I'm telling you already.
Aqua Bliss Fish Spa. So it's a spa for fish?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah. It's in Barcelona. And it was something where I went there on my trip to Spain that I shared about on this podcast. I didn't talk about it just because I had a lot to talk about. But this is, okay, my travel tip piece of this is, I went there to get a pedicure. And I also did the thing where you put your feet in the tank with the fish and they eat the little skin off your feet.
What?
And yeah, that's the thing, is like there's this type of fish where like they just eat the dead skin off your feet and everything. So it's an experience for sure. Pretty much I just like have realized on the last couple trips I've taken that some form of like self-care is still important during travel, which is really hard for me to admit, because I just want to go when I'm traveling and I forget like it's still me and I'm still living my life. And so like if I'm taking a trip for 2 weeks, like normally in a 2-week time span, like I have a day where I just chill at home, or I have a day when I'm not doing much after work, like there's downtime, and then I travel and like forget about that. And so I've done a couple different things on the recent trips where like I'll just go get a massage halfway through the trip, or stuff like that. Sarah, you were talking about that with you getting a massage. And so I was in Barcelona. It was about halfway through my trip, and I was like, I want to be out. I just don't want to go back to my hotel, but I just need to chill for a little bit. And so I went and got lunch and had some wine. And then I went and got this really good pedicure and read my book. And it was fun as well because I've never gone to one of those weird fish places where so like it was still a fun new experience for me. And then also it was just like really good downtime, halfway through the trip for me to kind of like re-energize a little bit. And also like self-care, like physically can be really fun on a trip when you're like not staying in your own bed and like washing your laundry in the sink and stuff like that. It was like nice to have a new pedicure as well. And so, I would say if you're in Barcelona, this place was really good. Like super good massage that you got with it. So I'd recommend it specifically, but then also I would just say like, think of something that would be like a fun way to like treat yourself, so yeah.
Nice.
Sarah, what about you?
Well, let's see, before I lived in Ireland, I actually traveled in Ireland, and there is a place down in the southwest. The very southwest tip of Ireland is called the Dingle Peninsula. Yes, that is the name. But what I did,
Cheryl, are you going to be able to make it?
I don't know. We might just need to mute me for a little bit or something.
Continue, Sarah.
Okay, I'll try to hold it together.
Well, what I did while we were there is we rented bicycles and we rode our bicycles around the entire peninsula. And it was so cool because it's like cliffs and, you see all these little cottages and little teeny towns, little pubs, so it just takes you all across the countryside and also, along these beautiful lookout places. But I think that was definitely the way to see that peninsula was on the bicycle because you had to go slow enough to see everything. And I think if you drove it, it just wouldn't be the same.
Yeah, and that's
so
I think
cool.
typically because I've looked at maybe going to Ireland and I've read a little bit about the Dingle Peninsula, and almost everything it's like a bus tour or like you rent a car or something like that. So how long did it take you to bike the whole peninsula?
I feel like it took the better part of a day.
Okay.
But we also stopped at a lot of places along the way and went to little pottery shops and
Fun.
stopped in. In fact, I have a little cup that I bought at a pottery shop and put in my backpack on that
That's
bike
fun.
trip. So, yeah.
And then, so it's a peninsula. So do you bike around the peninsula and then bike all the way back?
We did a big loop. So this was like several years ago, and I was staying in this hostel there on the peninsula. And if I remember right, I think we might have even rented our bikes from the hostel. And then we just did a big loop around and back to the hostel, which you could do. So we just
Cool.
kind of followed the road around.
Fun.
Yeah.
That's
that
really
sounds
cool.
awesome.
It was amazing. So
That's fun.
Yep.
Oh,
I would.
nice.
Oh, okay,
Tell people to
adding
do
that to my list too.
How about you, Ryan?
So mine is in an odd way similar to Sarah's. It's not a bike tour, but I did. So I spent I've been to Slovenia a number of times, but one of the times that I went, I was there for like 5 weeks. And during that time, I wanted to get together with another friend that I had met one of the previous times, but he was in Germany and we were in Slovenia. And so Salzburg, Austria was actually like a halfway point. So me and another friend
to go to Austria.
Well, yes. Yeah, sure. And so me and another friend rented a car and we drove up to Salzburg, and then he took the train over, I think from Munich, I think is where he was. And we met in Salzburg. We were only there for a few hours. And so I was looking at bike tours because I've done bike tours before and I actually really enjoy those. So I was like, oh, maybe we could do a bike tour. And we were looking, it was like, okay, but the weather was kind of iffy. It was cloudy and like threatening rain and stuff. And then I don't remember if I had researched it online or whatever, but somehow I had found that they do Segway tours.
What?
Wow.
Yep. And I had ridden a Segway before in college. And I was like, it's super fun. And so I was kind of like, well, it's not super cheap, right? It's more expensive to do a Segway tour than it is to do a bike tour. But you can cover a lot more ground a whole lot faster because the Segways go fast, pretty fast. And so I was like, I don't know. It's up to you guys. It's more expensive. Like, I've got it in my budget, but if you guys don't, it's okay. But I convinced them, I guess, to do it. So we did a Segway tour around Salzburg.
Oh my gosh.
And it was so much fun. It was so much fun because you've got this silly little helmets on and you have to like learn how to balance and drive. Actually, the hardest part about riding a Segway is staying still. Because if you lean one direction, you start to move that way. So the hardest part is learning to not move. And so on
that would be hard.
Our tour guide was hilarious. And so it was just me and my two friends, and then I think like one other family that ended up wanting to do it. So it wasn't super big. And we just kind of drove around, and it was somewhat toury. Like, he told us some things. Like, we stopped at the outside of the Abbey that they film in Sound of Music.
Cool.
So I've got a really dumb picture of me and my two friends on our Segways outside of the gate where they do that, which is just dumb. But like, so there's tons of like, it's really steep. There's like a mountain hill, like in the middle where there's like a castle sort of a thing. And so instead of having to like walk up that or bike up that, we just segwayed. I don't know if that's the word. Up and down. And it was super fun. It started raining partway through. And so we were drenched, but it didn't matter because we were on Segways and it was super fun. So that would be my wish you were here, because it was super, super fun. I wait to see Salzburg just for a couple hours.
Okay. They sound so terrifying though.
They're not.
Really?
No. Like, it's not this, oh my gosh, I'm going to fall over. No, it's definitely not, because you really are in control of it.
Okay.
Right? Like, again, at least at the tour that we did, it was probably 20 minutes at least before we were allowed to leave sort of this main area outside the little shop. We had to like go through and like try some things out and try, go this fast and now try to do this sort of a thing. And I mean, they had helmets for us. And I mean, there were a couple of times where it's like, oh, I'm going the wrong way or whatever, but you can always just slow yourself down if you don't feel like safe or comfortable going as fast. But it was really, really fun.
Yeah, I've never done that.
Awesome. And I am going to tell our listeners, this is not a dig at you, Ryan. I need to say this for our listeners to understand. Ryan's not super athletic. So
no.
When Ryan says that it's not hard, like, I feel like I can trust that.
Okay. An activity for everyone.
Yeah, if I say it's not hard, and if it doesn't require a whole lot of, I'm not a particularly coordinated person either. So yes, I think that is valid, Cheryl. If I can do it, then really anybody should be able to do it.
That's awesome.
Oh man.
So there you go.
Some science, I don't know, equation, what do scientists even do? Then I wouldn't trust it to say like it's not hard. But with this, it's different. Yeah. I don't know. What do scientists do? Experiments?
Yeah.
Okay,
tests.
sure. Yeah. Yeah. Those things. Yeah.
Studies, reports.
Yeah. All of the hypothesis, test tube. What are other science words I know? Beaker.
Photosynthesis.
Yeah, that's a word.
A Bunsen burner.
Ooh, there we go. Guys, we are rocking this.
That's one way to look at it.
I just made Ryan facepalm, and I'm feeling really good about
No,
myself.
I didn't
right
facepalm.
now.
I'm rubbing my forehead. It's not quite the same.
Sure.
All right. So thank you, Sarah, so much for joining us today. This was fun.
Yeah.
Thank
Even if I'm a
you for
little
having
jealous.
me.
Yeah. And thank you, listeners, for listening. We would love it if you were to follow us on social media. We are at Timwy Podcast, TMWY Podcast, on all the different socials. We'll be posting pictures, and we will be, of course, having links to our podcast for the episodes. And if you are traveling somewhere and you want to tag us or send it to us on social media so we can see where you're traveling, that would be great, because we'd love for you to take us with you.
Yeah, you can also email us at timwepodcast@gmail.com and tell us your travel stories, your time when your water shut off in your Airbnb, or any other fun stories that you have, or your own empanadas recipe, whatever you want to send us. We would love to hear it. So you can email us there.
You can also give us a call and leave us a voicemail at 406-763-8699. That's 406-POD-TIMWY. We would also really appreciate it if you were to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast. The more people who review and leave us a rating, the more people can hear about it. And then, selfishly, the higher chance that maybe someone will help us travel, so we can go more places.
Yep, pretty much. As always, thank you so much to Beth Morrell for her awesome artwork. You can check her out at Beth Is Something.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Beth. Thank you one more time, Sarah. We really had a great time hearing about your trip.
Thank you. That was really fun.
Yay.
All right. And until next time, remember to take me with you.
Take me with you.